I watched The Menu.
I wish you were in The Menu and got chopped up.
I would be the s'mores. I would happily die as s'mores.
Which part would you be? The crusty little cracker?
Wait, you guys weren't obsessed with Iron Chef?
I liked Iron Chef. there's a
Iron Giant?
I did like the Iron Giant.
I do love the Iron
That movie's
Giant.
so
good.
scary. The fact that you guys
Scary.
liked
It's
it.
sad. It made me cry.
It was
Sad
so
is scary
sentimental.
when you're
Sad is
little.
scary.
When you're a small person.
But isn't-
Every movie's sad though. Every movie when you're little is sad. Everyone's parents die.
Yeah, why do they do that?
It's really f***ed up.
Are they preparing us
yes, I think
For
that's how
now.
they teach kids.
for the age we're at?
For the age
But
we're at
in,
now,
but in
except for-
Iron Chef, they would introduce a certain ingredient, which would be a surprise to the competing chefs. So like, for example, and then it would be some like guy announcing the ingredient that they would have to incorporate into their dishes. It would be like pizza dough. And it would be like, that's how he said it. He would announce it like that. And it was so exciting. It was like most of my 20s was just like Iron Chef.
And what did they make with pizza dough?
No, you're not allowed to do it. She's half Asian.
Yeah, it's a Japanese guy. Pizza
Oh, it was Japanese. I just thought he was like.
But wait.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Trash Tuesday today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Trash Tuesday.
Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Trash Tuesday. That's rocketmoney.com/Trash Tuesday. rocketmoney.com/Trash Tuesday.
Hi, Slugs. I am back on the road with my stand-up, and I cannot wait to see you guys. June 3rd, I'll be in Atlanta. That's so soon. June 4th in Raleigh. And then I'm coming to New York City, DC, Boston, Madison, Chicago, and Detroit. Get tickets at EstherOnIce.com.
Yo, what up? I'm back. I'm here. I'm very excited to be on the road performing comedy, doing fun meet and greets with you guys, and selling new merch. You can come see me at Magoobies in Baltimore, June 2nd and June 3rd. I'm going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah at Wise Guys Comedy Club with Josh Potter, June 9th and 10th. I'm going to be in San Antonio, Texas, June 23rd and 24th. In August, I'll be in Philadelphia at the Punchline, the 11th and 12th. I'm going to be at the Calgary Great Outdoors Comedy Festival with Andrew Schultz, August 27th. I'm going to be in Austin, Texas at the Vulcan Gas Company, October 6th and 7th. I also have a lot of other dates going up in San Francisco, San Jose, and a lot of other very cool places. So go to annieletterman.com/shows for that. And every Thursday, you can come hang out with me and Todd and any crazy guest that we pick up. At Anniewood. That's every Thursday at 9 a.m. PST. We go live, doing a live chat, so come hang out with us on YouTube. See you there.
You guys, I terrorized my clitoris on Monday.
What
I think
kind of
well.
a sentence
I'm not well.
is that?
I just can't touch it I think I'm banning myself from masturbating
But do you ever have it too where it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, my pussy's like raw. Like,
That's
it's like
what I'm
not even
saying.
just my clit. It's like my whole, I'm like, this is like, it's in a different, I repositioned it.
I'm raw. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what happened, but I'm out the game for the next 2 weeks. Too hard on myself.
But are you
too
gonna be able to-
often?
are you going to be able to not do it?
Yeah. No. I have good self-control.
Wait, so it was FaceTime sex?
The first one was FaceTime sex with a very cute boy, and
Esther.
I heard that you fucked a fan. I heard
Esther's
that
like, I also want to let you know I'm a fan.
I heard that there was one lucky contestant out there.
there might have been. Yeah.
Which I just want to say props to you.
Esther, have you ever done that? Had a fan?
Well, it's like guys have sex with their fans. So
And it's so different.
so when a girl does it, I'm like, I want to shout it from the rooftops. I think that rules.
I will say that it exceeded all my expectations.
Yeah.
The sex was great. The makeout was great. He was hot. He was like really caring and doting. He is like literally perfect.
Oh my God. So one lucky
And
fan.
a ticket buyer. He pays for tickets. I'm like, and you pay full price? There's no guest list?
So you didn't know when you buy a ticket, you don't know what that could lead to.
No. Oh, God. Esther, what are you setting us up for?
Oh, yeah, wait. Well, it happened.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not how we met.
The world.
We met in a more casual way.
It was so not casual.
And don't even give any more information.
Stop.
Don't give more information.
No, you cannot participate in this conversation.
I don't know. I don't know what she's talking
You're
about.
banned.
But how, like, because usually you're like, okay, this is a bad idea. But it wasn't, you guys. It was not a tiny bit, not a freaking morsel of regret in me.
Wow. And
She's getting all
And I'm
flushed
still
talking about
horny
it.
for him.
She's flushed.
to be on the level too where you can do FaceTime sex, like, like that's like isn't that like almost like a higher tier of intimacy to be willing to do FaceTime sex? I believe.
Knowing that they're screen recording it?
No.
Posting it on
Oh my
Reddit?
God.
No.
Wait, I'm going to ask.
I didn't think about that. Dude, because I straight up put the lens right into my fucking pussy hole. Like, it was grotesque. And like, I was, things were spread. Open. Lips were pulled apart. Assholes were exposed.
How many holes?
I need to get on my
assholes do you have?
computer.
Esther's got some more directing to do. Pull the lip a little further this way. Now, I'm going to ask a prying question.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer. Was this fan the one that sent a letter to your merch person or whatever?
What?
Oh God, no.
Remember when she was like, I love this. I was like, Khalyla, the hope you're giving to the letter writer.
There was a person who sent a love letter to our merch people. We're
Obviously
great.
not our merch people.
Obviously not.
It's coming.
But it's coming.
Conversations have
It was like,
been
can
had.
you please like let Khalyla know that, but they sent it to the merch guy, like the person who does all of like our orders and stuff. And I read it and it was really sweet, but also no.
Can you imagine? You just sent a picture of your pussy back with the lip. He's like, this is a little much.
Wait, is this this like, what do you call it when you fuck someone in the workplace? Like, fraternization, but the opposite of that. But like, is this illegal what I'm doing?
No.
Illegal? Esther's
How old
that's
is
not
he?
illegal.
He's my age.
Please?
He's my age.
There's no illegal.
It's not illegal, right?
No.
Is
You think
it like
it's
not
a power
cool?
struggle?
No, because he obviously already like likes me, so it's maybe a disadvantageous for him.
Wait, can we talk about I'm wearing the same shirt I was wearing on the fucking episode?
I want to talk about how I think it
To change
requires a
shirts.
more intimate. Wouldn't it be a little bit like higher tier of intimacy to have FaceTime sex with Todd?
Yes, but wouldn't it be higher intimacy if I was wearing a different shirt? You guys talk to each other. I'm changing my shirt. Smell it.
Wait,
So you're saying you fraternized with someone that had a prior association?
yeah, am I
No.
taking advantage of a situation?
No, because men have sex with their fans every night after shows, and
Oh.
it's like, and men have the higher level of power, I think.
Yeah, and I did. My thing is like, I'm coming in already knowing he likes me.
There's nothing law to do with that.
No,
like,
nothing.
you didn't. I think. I mean, I'm not Ben Franklin, but I feel like you're good.
Thank God. Thank God. Then I'm not ashamed to say it. I have fucked a fan.
Yeah.
And more than just that, everything.
Oh my God, our guest is here.
Oh my God,
Come on
she's
in.
here.
Okay, so enough about us. Our guest has joined us. Welcome, Amanda Knox.
Hello.
Or as the headlines call her, Foxy Knoxy.
Is that triggering?
I mean, it's just so sad how it got appropriated because I got that nickname from my soccer teammates. So it was like a girls thing.
Yeah.
And
I thought you were
then
gonna
it
say the coach. I was
became
like, oh, no.
no. Thank
Put him on
God,
the show.
no. That would my coach was great. He was like a military, just crazy guy who ran us until we threw up. But he never ever did anything weird and sexy at us, which is fantastic.
I know. I'm so grateful for those 2 to 3 teachers.
The ones that actually like did their job
Yeah.
well. You're right, because I had a friend who dated the high school soccer coach, and she was 15 and he was hot.
They're always hot.
Yeah, they're always really
Yeah.
hot.
They're always hot and they always run with you.
Yeah.
And you kind of like it how they boss you around, you know?
My swim coaches were
They
all
punish you a little bit. I know.
Like, why are swim coaches? Why are they coaching us in speedos? Why are they?
no. Swim coaches are never hot. They're never hot.
My swim coach
Soccer
died.
coaches, yes.
I loved my swim coach. His name was Joe Jackson. I know that sounds like it was a different Joe Jackson,
It
but
certainly does.
his name was also Joe Jackson. And he wore these like rainbow suspenders and he always had like a lollipop. and like a bucket
He was
hat.
raving
He was
all
awesome.
the time.
He was a raver. He was always on Molly, his ecstasy back then. But he died. He had like a heart attack while he was driving, and his daughter had to like hold thing him when he
shoot.
died.
Dude.
And I quit swimming.
That's why.
No, I got a
Great, beautiful story.
story. Well, I'm trying to lead us into a little trauma. You know what I mean?
Amanda,
gateway
before you
trauma.
got before you got here, we were deliberating on whether or not it was okay that I recently had sex with a fan.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I just
Okay.
got out of a 10-year relationship,
Uh-huh.
and my last sexual encounter was with someone who was initially a fan, and which grew into a friendship, which then grew into which then became my lover, basically.
Wait, have you had sex with a
Yeah, did you get people like trying to fuck you while you're in prison?
Yeah, no, there were a lot of people who sent me some really weird shit when I was in prison. So like either they had photoshopped my head onto like some naked woman and
You were the OG AI porn?
I mean,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
I'm not the OG. I'm sure lots of other women were before me. But yeah, no, I got plenty of people who like straight up photoshopped, then printed it out, because that's how you had to send it to me.
Yeah.
And then wanted me to sign it and send it back to them. I also had people send me things like underwear and bras that they wanted me to sign and send back to them.
really?
People just asking me for my underwear.
So what do you think people? It's just like you were pretty, and they had like a fetish for someone accused of murder.
I think a fetish is a little bit of. Actually, no. I want to remove the word fetish because that gets a bad word. Like I think people's fetishes are their own business and they're totally fine. But like I do think that like fantasy played a big part in how I was particularly vilified, and I feel like the way that, like, to give you an example, one of the ways that like very early on the detectives who were investigating the case, like they were asked in these interviews, it's like this big, all of a sudden this big case, and they had just arrested me, and they were like, how did you know it was this girl next door? And they were like, she smelled like sex. And it was like,
What?
wow, okay, so first of all, when were you ever near me enough like to get a whiff, first of all? And second of all, like I think you're projecting maybe just a little bit. So I feel like a lot of it came down to like them getting strong vibes about me very early on, and they didn't know where to attribute them. And I have some feelings that like potentially what was happening was there was some fantasy projection in a tragic context, and that just got all mixed up.
Yeah.
Right.
Was any part of you like, oh, I didn't realize I was pretty?
Again, like it all feels super fucking fake to me. Like I feel like the image of me of being this like hypersexualized person was not even accurate. I feel like the entire thing was so incredibly exaggerated that I never actually felt like anyone was really talking about me.
Right.
They were talking about an
idea.
idea of a person that had nothing to do with me, that just happened to have my face and my name. And
That has
so
to
like,
be
no, I was never flattered. Like,
Wait, that is wild.
Esther, you had some jealousies, right?
Well, I was just wondering, like, what would you say? Like, what would you say to someone? Like, was there any excitement of like being so famous so fast, and like also in the context of being pretty?
Wait, that's what you were jealous of
Well,
at that time?
No, after like your case, I would sort of like in my head make jokes about like how I thought that like the only way I could ever be really famous, like, and be beautiful is if I was accused of murder. And
oh,
And now nobody accuses you of it.
But you didn't need to be, because Eileen Wuornos, they did a whole movie about her.
who's that?
A monster with they had Charlize
Charlize
Theron
Theron.
play her, but in real life how can you not know Monster?
No, I know Monster, but I guess I don't know. Like,
Energy drink.
I'm gonna switch the subject.
But back to your question about getting famous really
She's half
fast.
hooked. She likes it.
Was there any? Did you feel any sort of like
Little
I am
girl.
literally like headline news in the world? Holy shit!
Can I ask how old you are?
You don't want to know. You don't want to know. I'm 35.
Oh, you're 35.
Yeah, see?
Shit. Okay, we're the same age.
That's why it's like we were the same age at this time that this happened. And like, so how old were you when this happened?
I was 20.
Okay, so I was also
Like
20.
so young and barely
A person.
forming
Yeah.
your life. And then you were going to be in there forever?
I
Is that
was
what it's
so
supposed
they
to be?
were asking for life imprisonment, and I ended up getting sentenced to 26 years.
Holy
That is the
shit.
scariest shit. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you're like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. So to answer your question, and then so we can get back to your question,
Right.
because you're dealing with a potential ethical crisis. To
Right.
get back to your question,
Ooh, you're good.
fame was not anything that I was remotely thinking about at the time. I was like stuck in a prison cell. And
Yeah,
I was
Esther.
not even fully like aware.
Somebody's going to ask the like lame
The
questions.
dumb girl. She's representing Gen Z for us.
That's why I asked the question, because like actually I remember when I first came home from prison, like I'm super just like
Couldn't believe it. Yeah.
super traumatized, and this is when I actually was first sort of introduced to the fact that like this was such a huge thing. Like my family had been saying like this thing has gotten really out of control, and they would tell me about it. But of course, I'm in a prison cell where I only have access to so much information.
Yeah.
And so I don't like my access to this is every time I walk into a courtroom, there's hundreds of people there who are taking pictures and like yelling things at me, but I've never been in a courtroom before, so
Right.
I don't know what's fucking normal.
You think that might be normal?
I don't know. And so my family's telling me this thing is out of control. I don't really fully comprehend this until I get home and there's a press conference waiting for me at the airport.
Yeah.
And wait,
I
how
have-
many years after?
This is 4 years
It's so
in
fucking
prison.
crazy.
And then, so I get home, I'm coming out of the airplane. First of all, even getting out of Italy was high-speed car chases from paparazzi who are ramming our car.
Oh my God.
I'm
and
like,
then-
Esther
look at my
still-
goosebumps.
Esther's still
Yeah.
jealous. Esther's like,
It
when
was
does it
so
get bad?
But like my weird moment of like, oh, weird, people actually know
Yeah.
about me was when the local record store at like this local record store where I used to buy like CDs when I was a kid, on their like outdoor sign, instead of being like, Macklemore playing, it was Welcome Home Amanda.
Oh, that's so
And I was
wow.
like, oh my God. And then I was like, oh my God, people know about me. And I was like, oh no. People
Self-conscious.
like this is, they don't know about me is the problem. But because again, the story was never about me.
Mhm.
Like they made it about this idea of a person who didn't exist.
Mhm.
The guy who actually committed this crime, nobody's ever heard of him because no one gave a
Yeah,
shit.
they didn't
Right.
care.
And so here I am in a world that thinks it knows who I am. And so to get back to your point, one of the first things that I did was one of my teachers brought me into my high school to talk to her class. Just to be like, hey, you've been through this crazy experience. Do you want to like share some wisdom or whatever? Answer some kids' questions. And I remember being utterly heartbroken when the first thing that a kid asked was, what is it like to be famous?
Ooh, the
And
thing
I was
just
like,
asked.
I'm not.
She's like, how old are you? Because you act like you're a second grader. You remind me of a second grader I once
Well,
knew.
hey, that was not recorded on a podcast. So
And by the way,
somebody
can I
needed
just
it on
tell you,
film.
this is great. You're being perfect. Please keep going. Get her.
No, I think that's something that we don't really fully understand, is that when there's a person in front of us that's in this like big way, we sort of assume that the bigness of it is a part of it. And it's like, no, I'm just a little person living in this huge, overwhelming experience. And it's come to define my life in ways that I have no control over.
Right.
And fuck me, now what?
Yeah.
So to get back to your question, how do you, I don't know, what does it mean that he's a fan? What is it like? How did this relationship
it's somebody
develop?
who's listened to my podcast for the last 8 years, right?
So has
so
come
he's-
to love you through your work.
Correct.
That's a way.
So there's
Which
a
is-
parallel.
Which is strange because a lot of the stories that I tell are hyperbole. Like they're exaggerations of my life. They're not necessarily like the accuracy is not there. Like
right.
um
Heightened material.
it's way
Storytelling,
heightened. It's
podcast.
storytelling, it's podcasting, it's exaggerated. like, for instance, when I say like, you know, like I was molested as a child or I was inappropriately touched by my doctor. But instead of saying that, I'll say I was fisted by my family doctor.
Right.
Hyperbole.
Right.
But he has gotten to know me and gotten to like me through that. And when we finally met, it almost felt like there was some type of like power dynamic because here was a stranger in front of me.
And he knows everything about
And he
you.
knows everything about me. He knows.
Did you guys ever role play doctor?
Annie.
That's asking if you got fisted.
Yes.
Roleplay doctor does not sound hot to me at all.
Not at all.
Well,
to
especially
me.
when she was molested.
Yeah, no, I
But
had my
even
own
me not
personal Larry
molested.
Nassar. Like,
I'm
thank
so
you.
sorry because you got too much business to get to when you go to the doctor. Tell me what's going to get me out of all my work. Tell me what's going to make me not have to do yoga
To
anymore.
each their own. To each their own. Don't yuck anyone's yum.
True.
But so basically it's that, and then we became friends, and now it doesn't feel like there is a power dynamic. Like I really genuinely respect and like this person.
And you
I've
feel
gotten-
like he genuinely respects and likes
Correct.
you for you.
for me now.
Because I've definitely had the experience of feeling like somebody who I thought I had a special connection with, I realized later on had an idea of me that was based upon this whole crazy
Right.
story. And like at one point he told me that he thought I was the reincarnation of Joan of Arc.
Oh,
And I was
see it.
like, you know, right? The burning.
You probably have to live
but-
up
I
to
was like,
that
that's a
idea.
bipolar
that's
one,
the
I
thing.
think. Yeah.
It's like if you are an idealized version of a person, then you'll never be able to be the person that they want you to be, nor the person you need to
Right.
be. So like that's my concern. Is it's like, do they want you to be someone that's their idea of a person, or are they genuinely curious about who you are and are willing to accept you for who you are?
I think for this person, I think he was genuinely surprised and happy that I was. It turns
You
out
weren't
I'm pretty
fisted by the
normal.
family doctor.
Right. I wasn't like fully fisted. That I was just a
You only got a
pretty
couple fingers.
normal, you know, I think it started to grow when he realized that I was really just kind of this small thing.
Right. You're just a
and
person.
yeah. And
All your glory.
that's when we really
Just a
bonded.
person.
It is crazy, and you're like really reminding me of this concept. Like everyone is just a person.
Mhm.
Like Brad Pitt is just a person. Just
no, Brad Pitt's a theater major. Just a person.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp.
I will say that it is very easy to get caught up in what everyone else in your life needs.
Really, Esther? Maybe
and
someone else should take that line.
and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. Okay? Therapy has helped me figure out how to actually love myself.
Yeah.
Because you think you love yourself, you don't. You need to, it takes work. And without a therapist and without help guiding me to get there, it was never going to happen for me.
And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You guys, therapy has been an indispensable part of my life. It is the reason I'm alive today, and I recommend it to anybody, even if you are doing well. I always say just keep your grass green.
You'll
know-
be surprised the little things your head's telling you.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, it does suck that like we live in a culture where we do all need therapy, and that just is what it is. And BetterHelp is such a great option for that because it's the easiest, most convenient version, and you can do it from home. So it takes the excuses out of it.
Yeah, it's a good starter therapy too. Like if you've never gone to therapy before and you want to do something that's not going to be like give you a panic attack, this
Yeah.
is a great option.
And they have this option where you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. They have this really great journal feature. And all you really need to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists, like I said, anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Trash Tuesday today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Trash Tuesday. How many times have you been baited into, we'll try it for 30 days, just
Yeah.
enough time to try it, and then
Esther.
you completely forget to cancel it, and now it's 3 years.
now you're the
from now.
only one with the blue check mark. left. The only one that paid for your Twitter check mark.
I was a chosen one. It was just me and Stephen King that Elon felt we deserved to be verified. Well, I'll tell you this, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions that they forgot about, and chances are you're one of them. And like, the Stars app or whatever weird thing where you just wanted to watch one show and then completely forgot about it. I have about 6 of those on my iPad right now. Use Rocket Money to help you figure that out.
Also, Rocket Money helps you manage all of your finances in one place and automatically categorizes your expenses so you can easily track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person, listen to this, $720 a year. That is so much, you guys.
Oh my God, that's a pair of sunglasses.
That, Annie.
Just one?
I'm just kidding. I'm done overspending. Rocket Money saved me.
Yay! Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you, and for any you don't want to pay anymore, just hit cancel and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. It's that easy.
It does suck though, because it does take to the end of the cycle, so your blue check mark does show up. But it does get it for you.
Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Trash Tuesday. That's rocketmoney.com/Trash Tuesday. rocketmoney.com/Trash
Tuesday.
I have heard, I'm not sure if I've heard this said about you or if it's something that you said or if I'm somehow just like making it up, but I feel like I've heard about you that you feel like you cannot be the silly person that you truly are because like this very serious thing happened to you and like maybe you have to like hold back on being silly out of like respect or something. Is that real?
Yeah, so that's something that I've been slowly processing and grappling with over the past freaking 15 years of my life. Because going into this whole experience, one of the ways that I was vilified is when people called me like quirky. And their way of saying like, oh, she's quirky turned into quirky is also capable of murder.
Right.
Like quirky means that she's abnormal. Quirky means that she's depraved. And so there was this like weird,
which is crazy because quirky to me, I'm like, I think of Zooey Deschanel on New Girl.
Right. Well,
adorkable.
Yeah.
And it was a stretch, and it was always a stretch, which is why it felt like there was no way that anyone would ever believe it. And like going into like the day to receive my verdict, I thought it was all gonna like the adults in the room would be like, okay, so we're done like with this like charade of nonsense. Let's like let the poor girl go home. And then when they were like 26 years in prison, I was like, oh.
Were you like blacked out at that point? That must have been so.
Did you go in kind of knowing how the verdict was gonna go, or were you like, I'm getting the fuck out of here?
Home.
Holy fuck!
I was 100% convinced I was going home.
So in that moment when you hear guilty, what's happening?
So what it felt like was like the ground fell out from beneath me and then fell on top of me. And then I had this like tremendous existential crisis of everything I thought I could count on in the world no longer
Of course.
is true.
Yeah.
The truth doesn't even matter anymore.
Oof.
And now this is my life.
Yeah.
And so what was your question before that though?
Like you're a silly person that maybe you don't feel allowed to be silly because of this.
So yeah, I mean, I love comedy. I love, I'm a silly person. I was a theater major. You would have bullied the shit out of me. And I just love, like, I'm a quirky kid who likes to have fun. I play Dungeons and Dragons. I go to Ren Fair. Like I'm a fun, like that kind of person. And, I'm a silly kind of person, but because so many people have come to know me through the context of like an utter fucking tragedy and like a horrible, brutal tragedy, they think that if I am being silly, it's somehow a commentary upon this tragic, horrible, brutal thing that happened to my friend, and they're unable to like distinguish. And so, like, for example, one of the ways that I deal with, like, how everything I went through is sometimes I make jokes about it. I joke about being in prison. I joke about being wrongly accused. And then people are like, how dare you make jokes because your friend was murdered? And I'm like, I didn't make a joke about my friend being murdered. I didn't.
Also, that's literally like a theme of this show is we all use laughter to cope with hard things. Like I always talk about like the hardest I've ever laughed is at my grandfather's funeral. Like we just like they talk about being molested and I'm like hee hee hee. Like laughter and humor is how I cope, how all of us cope. So it's like I hear you say that and I'm like, duh, of course. But people don't understand.
But also it's like they're not even like taking into account that like your friend died. Like how traumatizing it is if you're not even like involved.
Well, two things happened. Your friend died, and
Thanks
then
for acknowledging that. A lot of people forget to like
like you had
before I was ever like a victim of the criminal justice system, I was an indirect victim of murder.
Right.
Like if I had been home that night, I would have been murdered. Like so I think people forget that.
Yeah.
Like it was just by luck
and being
that
like,
I met a guy and was hanging out with him the night that somebody broke into my house and murdered my roommate.
Yeah.
So
fuck.
And like just being falsely accused of any tiny thing, I'm like, it's the most infuriating
much
thing.
less
So
like a man's crime.
Right.
My roommate was raped and murdered and they were like, oh, you know, she must have orchestrated a sex game. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Well, I'm very like
testament to like men's brains.
Well, it's that fantasy thing.
Yeah, such a fantasy always.
I've been
you and your
pretty,
fucking boners, you ask.
I've been pretty open about how I used to watch true crime and I won't watch it anymore because I don't like the like basically what you're saying. Like I was watching an episode of Dateline and I realized it was one of my friend's sisters. And the minute it became like a real thing, which you don't get that grace from people because
they feel entitled to it and they don't understand that there's a real person behind it. And that with like, you know, it's not to say that they aren't stories worth telling.
Right,
it's just that like so often the people who are telling those stories are not the people who are actually the ones with the most invested, who have the most at stake.
Right.
In fact, I don't know. Do you guys know that I have a podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
what's it called?
It's called Labyrinths, and then the most recent like mini series we have is called Blood Money, and it's all about this. It's all about like the history of true crime and the problems with its ethics and like all these open questions because it's not just this easy black and white answer.
Of course.
So
well, because also you want like the story to be told. But there is something about like I'm like eating popcorn, like watching this, and like it's just
now I just want popcorn.
Crazy. I know. That's just like I'm jealous of the popcorn. Just envious shit working on.
You bring up like, oh wow, actually like no one points out that your friend was murdered and like the feeling like that could have been you if you were home or whatever. Like what before the craziness of being falsely accused of a crime, like what is that even like to come home? Did you discover that? Like are you screaming? Are you like that must have been its own surreal experience?
So thank you for asking that. So there was, from the discovery that my roommate had been murdered to my arrest was 5 days. And I was the one who came home and discovered that my house had been broken into. However, I never saw her body because somehow, I don't know actually why or how this happened, but the door to her bedroom was locked and she was murdered in her bedroom. I think what happened is the murderer had been rifling through her things to get money or credit cards or whatever and had grabbed her key and like locked her door. So here I am, I come home, I notice that my front door is wide open. I notice that there's like, eventually I sort of poke around and I discover that there's a window broken and I'm like, oh my God, someone broke into our house. And then I start calling my roommates. I have 3 roommates. Only one of them answers the phone. 2 of them do not. And so the one that does answer the phone says, oh my gosh, okay, you need to call the cops. And I'm like, I don't even know how to call the cops in Italy.
Yeah.
So I get Raffaele, my boyfriend, to call the cops for me. They come, they arrive. My other roommate arrives.
Wait, you already had an Italian boyfriend? You go, girl.
She's jealous again.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
Again, like
Esther wants to Freaky Friday. Oh my God, you're so lucky.
I actually do feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world because I'm not dead right now.
Yeah.
And other people in my position have spent way longer in prison than I have. So if you think about it, I'm actually quite lucky. So I called all the people to figure out what was going on. The police arrived, my roommate arrived, and they broke down Meredith's door and discovered her body. And I did not see into her room. I did not see what happened to her. all I heard, or all that happened, was suddenly a bunch of Italian people were screaming and yelling and talking very quickly in Italian. And I was not fluent at that point, so I was very confused about what was going on. And so we were rushed out of our house, and then I was taken to the police station, and I was asked to answer questions. And I ended up being questioned for 53 hours over
Holy
5
shit.
days. And slowly over the course of being questioned and talking to people in the police office, I discovered what had happened. So
Jesus Christ.
And then, do you feel like, so how did you meet Chris? How did you meet your husband?
Oh, we have actually a really cute story.
Yeah.
It's not a Tinder story.
Yes.
Although those can be cute too, I guess.
Yeah.
No, so I was, at the time that I met my husband, he was writing novels, being a poetry itinerant artist guy. And I was living in hiding, writing like arts correspondence for a local newspaper under a pseudonym. And so I would like go to plays and write reviews, or I would like read advanced copies of novels, and I was given an advanced copy of his novel. So I like to say that I wasn't sleeping with him until after I read it. Anyway, it's called War of the Encyclopedists. And
Is there anything like more like cute than you read his book? Like
I
that
read his
is-
book, and then at the very next day after I like submitted my review to the paper, I walked out of my apartment, and in like this diner window across the street was like a sort of poster like you would see for like a music show, but it was for a book reading for his
Welcome
book.
home, Amanda.
No. And it was at my local bookstore, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I never go out in public. I never do anything. I never go out. I'm just going to go and check out this book reading. And so I went, and it was there that I met him. And of course, people are like, whisper, whisper, whisper. Amanda Knox is here. Amanda Knox is here. And I'm just like, okay. So I'm sitting there trying to be invisible, failing epically. He's up there doing his like, I'm a cool like
Yeah.
book guy, and I and then at the end of it, I asked him for an interview for the paper. And like, what was so nice about Chris is like he had his nose in books the entire time that I was going through my experience. He like knew of me. He knew that my name was a name that people knew, but he's not like a true crime guy, so he didn't like know.
Yeah.
And he didn't bother to Google me when he met me. So
Yeah.
like the first 9 months of our friendship was just like hanging out and being a normal person. And then of course people are always asking him like, what do you think? What do you think? And he's like, dude, she's just my friend. Like, chill.
Oh, that's so
You know?
sweet.
And then he murdered that puss. Chris is here. I wouldn't say without Chris being here. We go back. No, but I think it's really like kind
He's
of
a
precious.
novelist. He gently.
Stop.
He didn't.
I don't know anything about books.
Maybe he writes romance novels. You don't know.
Wait a second. So you wrote under a pseudonym. Was there ever a part of you when you finally did come home? Was there ever a thought like, I should change my name, look completely different, abandon this image that these people had created of me by being somebody else completely and living that life with a little bit more freedom?
So here's the thing. I knew that was a trap, and that wasn't actually freedom. Because one, the stubborn part of me was like, there's nothing wrong with Amanda Knox. I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't have to be the one that changes my name and like tries to hide my identity.
I love that.
The other thing was whether or not other people knew who I was or what my experience was, I knew.
Right.
And so if I sort of like tried to live a life where I pretended like that didn't happen, I knew that was ultimately only going to make me feel distant from everyone in the world around
That's
me.
so wise.
That's so inspiring.
That's
I
just
mean, it's
Because
just what it is.
like I think just like even just by virtue of being in a podcast or like being up for consumption for the last decade, there is always that feeling in me where I just want to like cower and run and hide if anyone has any like criticisms about me. So I really love what you're saying. It's like, look, like I just am who I am, right? Like there's no running away from that.
you know you didn't do anything wrong, and that is the most
Yeah.
important thing.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that happened to me. And so like if I'm navigating the world as if prison didn't happen to me, like I'm one, lying to myself, and then I'm lying to everybody else. And that doesn't make for a good foundation for any kind of actual intimate relationship.
Is it hard to talk about? Does it like bring you to a place or?
Depends on different parts. I've taken the stance that there's no wrong questions and there's nothing that's off the table, just even for me. Like I shouldn't feel like anything is I don't want to be afraid of anything that I've experienced, so I'm open to talking about anything and all of it. That said, there are like moments when it's like, this is not an appropriate time for you to be asking me about the worst experience of my life.
Right.
Like when I'm trying to pay for my groceries at the grocery store.
Oh shit.
Like that kind of thing. It's like, no, thank you. I didn't
They wanna, like-
sign up for this.
They want to like gossip with you, but you're the gossip.
Yes.
You're like, but you want to gossip with me about me?
People are like, I've had somebody like holding my credit card be like, so did you really do cartwheels? And I'm like, so give me my card back.
Esther
Like-
really relates to that part as a gymnast. And then are you in touch with anyone from that time of your life? Like,
I'm in touch with Raffaele, who is the Italian boyfriend. You're so jealous of him. He's doing okay. I think he's had a worse time trying to reintegrate back into life. One, because he's in Italy and the stigma of the accusation is much bigger there. And I don't know, I feel like I'm really, again, lucky because I have anger, but that's not the primary emotion that I feel about everything. I feel more sad. And so I think sadness is an emotion that allows me to actually reach out and ask for help and ask for connection, whereas anger is something that is very, very isolating. And I think that Raffaele is still grappling with a lot more anger, justifiably.
did he go to prison too?
He was in prison for 4 years alongside
Exactly.
me
Wow.
because he was my alibi.
Oh my goodness.
And during those 4 years, are you just surviving, or is there like a moment where you're like, okay, I have to strategize like a life within these walls, like I have to figure out a way where it's not so grim for me to exist in here? Or are you just getting through your day like without much thought?
So there was a shift. The first 2 years of my imprisonment, I didn't have a verdict yet. And so I felt like I was just kind of like this lost tourist who was in the wrong place. And so I was just waiting to be allowed to go home. And so I spent those first 2 years really just feeling like, okay, I'm just surviving until the time when all the adults in the room get their shit together.
2 years.
2 years. I was 20 years old. And then the next 2 years after I was convicted and sentenced to 26 years, that's when I had this sort of like existential crisis come into myself. Like, how do I make my life worth living? And I couldn't figure out how to answer that question. So instead, I said, how do I make today worth living? And I just kept asking myself that same question over and over and over again every day.
And what were some like things that made that day worth living?
Writing a letter to my mom. I like outdid myself in some things. Like I would give myself challenges. Like I once did 900 sit-ups in one day. You know, like
That's a good use of
so
time.
stuff
Khalyla
like
does
that.
anyway.
I feel like, Esther, that wouldn't be your
Yeah.
Esther would be like, ooh, I don't have to work out.
I read a lot of books. I helped a lot of, like, most of the people that I was in prison with were illiterate. So I helped a lot of them, like, write letters to their family members.
Oh my God.
I was also, I sort of became the unofficial, like, translator in prison because there were a lot of people in there who couldn't speak Italian and could only sort of kind of speak like a pidgin English. And so because there are a lot of like African immigrants or people who had been used as like drug mules or something like that, prostitutes, that kind of thing. So they weren't native Italians. They didn't speak the language. They didn't really understand what was going on. They couldn't even read their court documents, much less like explain their ailments to the doctors or something. And so very often I was called in to translate for people.
Do you just basically wake up now every day like, I can't believe that I have freedom and like a beautiful life? Like, do you have that feeling every day now?
Definitely what it feels like is that I've had many lives. Like there was the before prison life that I led then there was the prison life that I lived, and then there's this life that I'm living. And they're so different that it feels like completely different lives. And also because in some really practical ways they are. Like when I first came home from prison, I thought I was going to get to go back to the life that I was leading before prison.
And you're like, uh-oh.
And I was like, oh no, the world has incredibly changed its attitude towards me. I'm not just like some anonymous kid anymore. But also I've changed, and I have to like refigure out who I am and what my place is in the world. And I have to live with this like crippling feeling of how uncertain everything is in the world. Like the amount of like faith that I had that like there's some kind of like sense to the world, or that I can trust authorities or anything like that, like all of that evaporated. And so like even to this day, I really struggle with the idea of like making plans. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, what's your like 5-year, 10-year plan? And I'm like, do you know how many random ass things are going to happen to you that are going to be more impactful than any of your fucking
You're like,
plans?
do not ask me about my 4-year plan.
I really relate to this because I have a lot of anxiety around planning in general. If someone's like, oh, like, do you want to go to so-and-so 6 months from now? I'm like, I can't give you that answer. Like maybe 2 weeks out I can. 3 weeks out I can, but I cannot do a lot of future planning. Sort of because like in the same way that like maybe things have happened in my younger life that have been such like life-changing things, like life-shattering things where I'm like, tomorrow, I don't know. Like I don't know what's around the corner, so I can't give you that answer.
Yeah, and at the same time, like the world sort of demands that you do that. Like I'm having to, you know, for career-wise, I have to like make plans for like next year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
So just do the best you can when you're present in the moment, and that's
Yeah.
all you can do. Like
The authority thing is really scary. That's so scary to just be like, am I protected? Did you find more like self-trust through it? Like
definitely, well, at first there was a incredible amount of not self-trust because the police made me feel like I was crazy. They told me that I had amnesia and that I had witnessed the murder and that I didn't remember it. And so I started to question my own sanity. And then afterwards, I blamed myself so much for like what had
Typical
happened.
gaslighting, basically.
Yeah, I was incredibly gaslit. So I blamed myself for years for what had happened. And I thought it was my fault that I was going through this whole experience. And
God, that is so universal for a victim to like blame themselves.
but then you add that you're fucking in prison. That is crazy.
And everyone says
A
that
real
you deserve
prison.
to be there and that you're a bad person. And even the people who like think that maybe you're innocent think there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Because like the stigma of being someone who was accused, people tend to think that at the very least you were asking for it somehow. Like maybe you're not guilty of murder, but you're guilty of
Cartwheels.
something. You're guilty of being a weirdo or whatever it is. And so like you sort of have to and like when the whole world is telling you that, you feel like they must be right. And so for years I blamed myself. And it wasn't until I met other wrongfully convicted people who had gone through the exact same experience that I did that I was like, oh shit, people are asking the wrong question. They're constantly asking what's wrong with me. And they're not asking what's wrong with what was done to me.
Right.
Right.
And then do you have like a network of people that you still kind of communicate? Yeah, because I was going to say, it's like we can all try to relate, but it's like it's just such a unique. It's such a.
I'd like to think that anybody can relate to anything if they want to. Like I've had an incredible relationship with a friend of mine who, it's funny, we like connected over poetry, and then after a while she figured out who I was. She didn't know who I was at first, and like she came in to like hang out and was like, oh my God, you're Amanda Knox. And I was like, fuck, what did you Google? And she was like, no. She's like, you don't understand. I was gang raped when I was a teenager.
Oh my God.
And everything you talk about, like
Jealous?
with that feeling of like
Annie.
being, you know, like how these like overpowered and vulnerable and made to feel small and like taken advantage of, like all of that is really resonant with me. So like the feeling, like what happens to you isn't necessarily the thing that connects people. It's the way that it's impacted you. It's the way that it makes you feel. However, there are some things about meeting other wrongfully convicted people where it's like you just don't have to explain anything to them.
Right.
Like the most relieving thing that I've ever had happen to me was walking into a room for the first time of other wrongfully convicted people, by the way, mostly men and mostly men of color, who came up to me and just the first thing they said was, "You don't have to worry about a thing, little sister. We know." Like, you don't have to explain a thing. And I was just like, the relief that washed over me of like, oh my God, I don't have to explain myself to people in this room. Like, like that. I didn't know how much that I had been holding, feeling that. And so.
Oh, that makes me emotional.
I know. Like, fuck.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
We can talk about stupid, gross stuff.
No, I'm glad that we,
No, but that I'm sure is something that like so many people can relate to in different ways of like wanting to feel understood. And for you to finally, after all those years, just have that moment of feeling understood seems like really healing.
Oh, here we go. It always feels like
Banana break.
We have on our show, we have banana break.
When emotions are high.
I used to feel like I needed to tell people that happened to me. Like it felt like such an important part of like who I was. Like I wanted everyone to know this like thing that I went through. And then I stopped like personalizing it. Like I stopped being like, it's like kind of what you were saying. It's like a thing that happened to me. It's not like me or like a part of me. It's just like a thing that happened, and that's been really helpful. But it's interesting, like where everyone already knew, you didn't really get the experience for people to not know what happened to you.
Yeah, it wasn't a choice for me.
Yeah.
However, I think that there's actually a really important thing that happens where, like, I remember there was a moment where I was like, who am I now? Like, this horrible thing happened to me. I just got home from prison. Who the fuck am I now? Like, the only thing that people care about is the fact that I'm a girl accused of murder. I don't even know what that means to me. Like, what does that mean to me? And so it takes time for you to get to the place of being able to say, this isn't just me, it's just a thing that happened to me. Like, I feel like you have to go through a place of like having processed it, having put it into context in your own mind, and like having lived some experiences outside of it. So it's not just this thing that's on top of you that you just like went through. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it is true that just you need time to grow up and figure out where that thing is and put it in its proper place.
Yeah, and then like it kind of feels like very impactful to not tell it sometimes, you know, to not tell the story. I'm like, oh, that actually feels like really good to not have that. And I used to have this image of like every time, like I just realized I was like dragging, my teacher had dreads. He was like a white guy with dreads. I'm just dragging this like white dreaded guy with me like throughout my life. I'm just like dragging by his dreads, like, come on to this part of my life. I got to tell everyone about you. And then I was like, let it go. Like, you know, and obviously it's still a little bit in me, but
it's still
is,
in
like,
me too. It's super still in me. I don't think it ever is not in you.
I work on that anger though too, because the anger, I think you're right. It's like, it really does, like, it separates you from the outside world.
Yep. I also think that there's something about being a girl that, like, that feeling of just not being believed is different. Because a perfect example is, like, when we talk about our traumas on this podcast, being sexually assaulted, being, you know, like all the horrible things that have happened to us. Like lately I've been seeing and reading things like, oh yeah, look, those girls are lying, or it's too much. No, like all of those things couldn't have happened to one person or to Khalyla.
Sorry you weren't hot. Sorry you weren't hot.
In the meantime, you have someone like my ex partner who's like a lovely person, but he tells maybe even more extreme stories about his life. Never questioned ever. Never. The veracity of what he says is never questioned. Yeah. But mine, sexual assault, things that are very believable that could happen to a woman, always just like, that couldn't have happened to her. She's lying.
Are you sure that you were sexually assaulted?
Am I? You know what I mean? Yeah.
What were you wearing to that doctor's appointment? Tell me you weren't bottomless at the gynecologist, Khalyla.
I must have asked for it. Been on my knees and said, "Do me, Dr. Mardelli."
I could also see you doing that though.
You bet.
On behalf of the commenters at home.
But that must like be also true of your experience. It's like a photo of you smiling and suddenly you're so happy your roommate is dead. Like that.
Yeah, this is why it feels like there was just a story that was happening on its own with a character on its own. Like Foxy Noxy was a character in other people's narratives and imaginations that had nothing to do with me and that I had no agency over. I was not the one writing that script. And I was just the one who was living with the consequences of it.
And how do you feel as someone that had a poster of her on your
Will you sign it?
Sure. Why?
Esther's like, oh my God. Can you do a cartwheel, please?
Like, I do have to ask this question because, like, there's always talk on TikTok about how, like, in Italy, like, the food doesn't make you bloated. Was the food in prison?
Is that what people talk about on TikTok? I don't know. I'm not on TikTok.
Like because you were in prison, but in Italy, like, was the food?
You know how like so many people ask me that question actually? Like a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. We're going to an Italian restaurant. I bet you're tired of that."
So
and I'm
funny.
like, "Oh, I was in prison in Italy. So no, we were not having caprese." Like, no, I was having prison food.
Oh.
I spent 4 years in Italy to eat prison food.
She's so lucky. Diet plan. Oh
Damn.
my God. Meal prep.
It's like planned out for you. I don't know.
Wait, when you were in Italy, did you feel bloated at all?
No, because this is like a big phenomenon on like hot girl TikTok where people talk about like you can eat pizza and like grains in Italy and you don't feel bloated because it's not like poisonous like it is in the US.
Well, what is true is that here in the US, I never eat pizza here in the US unless it's made by an actual Italian person. And that's due to the way that they do the dough, like the ingredients. Like in Italy, they treat pizza like actual food with like actual ingredients, and they don't just like fluff it up artificially with like weird plastic cheese. Like
Yes.
yeah, no. So yes, pizza in Italy is better. Okay. It is factually better.
This might seem
Like
like
you 4 years in prison to have that.
I know that from
I was like, it's totally worth it.
because
We didn't eat pizza in prison though. I was from the 5 weeks I was in Italy before I was put in prison.
Oh my God. 5 weeks was all you were there?
Yeah.
Well,
Were you
like
going home soon after that?
No, I actually had just arrived in Italy
Okay.
and I was planning on spending the year there to
you
study abroad.
when you think about Italy as a whole, are you like fuck that place, or are you like, okay, well, that happened? Because if that were to have happened to me, fuck pizza, fuck anything Italian related, fuck all Italian soccer teams, like just fuck anything relating to that country. Like that would be just so, my rage, I think, would just like bubble over for this place that did this thing to me.
I mean, it's not a place that did something to me. It was some people who did something
Right.
to me. I do think that there was some aspects of it being in Italy that contributed. One was that I was not fluent in the language when I was being interrogated. That was played a huge
Right.
factor. But other things like I think because there was this like Madonna whore dichotomy story going on that particularly resonated in a culture that sort of was that kind of narrative was more common to hear.
Wait, what was that with you? Just that you were like sexualized because you were pretty, or like what?
Well, so the way that my prosecution argued, the reason they said that I murdered my roommate randomly one night, when I have no history of violence or mental illness, or even like I have a good relationship with my roommate. The day before she was murdered, we were texting each other back and forth about meeting up because it was Halloween. So we have this good relationship, and they decided to portray us as she's this stuck-up British girl who doesn't want to be my friend and who is constantly judging me because I'm like this slutty American girl. And so there's the Madonna-like virgin who ends up getting sucked into my depraved sex orgy game, and then I murder her in the midst of that game to punish her for basically like wagging her British finger at me for being this slutty American girl.
It makes perfect sense.
It's just
It's like
so
Reddit.
wild.
It sounds like Reddit with our show.
The conspiracy theories on there.
Ooh, Annie didn't look over Khalyla for 3 weeks.
Apparently, I had sex with Rick Glassman. Did you guys know that? Apparently, that's a thing. I didn't know about it
Like
until
on
2
the
weeks.
show?
I mean, apparently that was something that I kept from the world. Like I just like some of these things that are thrown. Like I'm like, wow, men really do have like this kind of sick imagination. Where
They're
how
just
far they take
gossipier
things.
than they want to admit. It's just gossipy,
That's fair.
Like, you know, like, ooh, what's this?
Yeah, what's stanky
But maybe
stuff
it's
she
not
ever
as like
bought?
benign as you're like, just don't read this stuff. You know, it's nothing. It won't affect your life. But it's like, maybe it will and it can and it has. So careful, guys. Maybe
Yeah.
those comments aren't as benign as we think.
Oh God.
You're killing us. You're killing us.
So we saw you last night at the premiere party for Whitney's
Yeah.
roast. What was that
Yes.
like appearing on a comedy roast after like I don't know, was that very freeing for you or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it felt good. It felt great.
To
I
be
mean,
silly.
Whitney's always been so freaking supportive, and I think that just the fact that a lot of people in my life are like, "Oh man, you're like so funny and like so much fun."
Yeah.
But like Whitney was like, "Let's capitalize on that." And I was like, "Great.
Whitney's the
Let's
Kris
go."
Jenner.
No, but
really
I
is,
know
though.
she's such a boss, and she was like, "Why do you have to hide? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with you being funny. Like, you made me laugh when we were hanging out together. I like make some people laugh."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Especially if I get to make fun of you. So,
She's such a good target. I really. Oh my God, there were like farm animals and
my daughter was having a blast
Oh my
backstage
God.
because they had like these inflatable, like they had these poor guys, like hours that day just like in these inflatable animal costumes for like a 5-minute thing on the stage. But they were like, "We're getting paid, we're feeling great."
I know.
So they were just hanging out backstage like mooing for Eureka. It's so cute.
Yeah, Whitney's like the perfect amount of extra. Her party last night was so cute and fun.
Yeah. You weren't even there when I put on the OnlyFans thong.
No.
What?
You did that?
I got there early and Eureka really wanted to go in the pool and I had not brought a swimsuit.
Oh
So I was
my
like,
God.
well, I guess I'm 20 weeks pregnant and putting on a thong. Sounds like fun. So I just like, I didn't even go into a dressing room. I was just like there by the pool and I was like, well, here's my boobs. Put them on
It's
the
Whitney's.
thing.
It's Whitney's house.
Yeah.
There's always boobs and badges out. But honestly, you could kill an OnlyFans pregnant with a. I mean, not to sound like Whitney here, but I think we gotta capitalize.
Wait,
on
that is true. I was on Chatterbait. I don't know
What
if
is that?
they're laughing because these are the only pervs that would know. Chatterbait is basically the site that has like live girls, guys, whatever you want on there, and they have one of the categories, as they do in Pornhub, is pregnancy. And these women were incredible. Like I was part of there was this one room that I entered and there were only 7 people in there. So it was very intimate. And she was just squeezing her milk into the camera. And I couldn't have given this woman more tokens in my life. I was like, send. And I was just like milk splashing into the screen. And I just like I couldn't stop for like a whole hour.
I don't know what Esther would be into.
No, I'm
honestly.
getting hungry. I was breastfed till I was 3.5.
Do you want to ask?
so-
Oh,
Amanda,
do you
she's
like, do you have
getting like that?
memories?
I do.
Who
I have-
has memories?
Memories.
I remember being breastfed. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, like do you feel good about that? Do you look at your mom's boobs in an interesting way?
No,
She's very boob sensitive though. Like she doesn't like any stimulation on her nipples at all.
I feel like that can't be related,
Did you
right?
see how good her?
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
so scared of you touching my nipples. Titty twister.
You're
Like if
scared.
someone
I
gave
would
me a
never
titty twister.
titty twist you.
No, I know you wouldn't, but I'm just saying, like, if
Titty twisting to a girl is
Why
that's
would
like,
you
Well, that's what my
it's the
mom
most
did to me.
evil thing.
We were at JCPenney when we first came. I grew up in the Philippines and I came here when I was 15.
They brought their J.C. Penney over.
And so this was like our big mall outing, the first big American mall outing. And My mom was like abusive my whole life. She beat my ass my whole life. Very typical. I love her now. But we were at JCPenney and she was like, ask for your bra size. But I was too nervous to ask the attendant. I was like, no, you ask. And then she asked my sister, you ask for your bra size. She was like, no, Ma, can you ask?
She
Like,
did both of you?
Dude, she took one nipple from my sister, one nipple from me, and she just
That
twisted.
will affect the size of the bra too, honestly. It's gonna be all
Dude,
swollen.
my sister and I, our second week in America, we were walking around with one blue titty.
Oh.
Stop.
It's so honestly, titty, because Todd will be like, I'm gonna pinch her. I'm like, it's not the same. It's not even
It's
a
not the
funny
same.
joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, get away.
Yeah,
Get
no.
away.
Listen, she's been to prison and she doesn't want this. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Falsely accused of murder. She'd rather have that than a titty.
Well, she didn't say that,
I put words in her mouth.
You're not the only one.
Now, okay, so you have Eureka and you have a son on the way.
I do, yeah.
So excited. You're your perfect little family.
I know, it's
After
weird.
all that fucking shit.
I know, I'm lucky. What can I say?
It all worked out. And you got to be in a
lucky.
pseudonym, so you got to meet Chris under like
Under
proper.
like just chill circumstances, and he like spent good 9 months into our relationship like not Googling me, only like occasionally like I'd bring up and like a great example of this is it's not like I wouldn't bring up prison because
Right.
of course it's a big part of my life. So he would be like, oh, let's watch Wall-E. And I'm like, what's Wall-E? And he's like, how do you not know what Wall-E is?
what are you?
And I was like, oh, I was in prison when I came out. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's really
Obama? We have a black president? So
What did you have access to? Like, what is like entertain?
I knew that Obama was. I didn't know who Justin Bieber was, though. I had no idea.
Wow.
Who that was.
Okay.
So confused.
what about
Also
like,
I feel like that might have been
No.
a blessing.
were there any like huge changes in technology when you came out of prison? Like, what was like the biggest surprises of the way life had changed?
Well, before I went to prison, it was like flip phones and you had to go to internet cafes.
Mhm.
And then when I got out, it was smartphones and touch screens and internet everywhere. And so like I actually remember my mom gave me her phone, like in the car chase as we're leaving the prison. She gave me her phone so I could call the family and tell them that I was coming home. And I didn't know how to interact with it because there were no buttons. And so she had to do the touch screen thing to like show me, like to dial people for me. And so I was just like, you do it. And then I just talked on the phone and gave it back to her when I was done.
When it was time to
So-
go home, were you like, okay, like I need to be like mindful of like how I reintegrate? Because that has to be so overwhelming, even like stimulus in itself, like the sounds of things again.
I was super naive and I thought that I was going to get, like I said, I thought I was going to just get to go back to being a normal person. And I was kind of impatient to go back to being a normal person because I had just spent 4 years waiting to be able to go back to being a normal person. So the last thing I wanted to do was like chill out and wait. And my mom wanted me to like live with her and to go to therapy and do all these things. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to go back to school. But of course, when I'm going back to school, people are taking pictures of me in class, and I'm
now their
being
fucking
followed by
phones can.
paparazzi.
Their
and now
phones
their phones
can.
can.
wait, so you did go back to school?
Mhm. Yep, I went back to school,
I'm not jealous of that.
and I got my degree. I finished my degree.
What was the time span from when you started college to when you finished?
So I started college in 2005,
And it's not going to be longer than
and
yours.
I know
and I graduated in, let's see, so it was 2014.
Okay. Mine
Because
was
there was
8
that
years.
4
Mine was
years
8
in
years.
between.
Mine was 8
Similar.
years.
Mine's similar. I went to college early, 17, and took a while.
Yeah.
It feels like such a natural trauma response to like get out and really want to go back to what you had before.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I would be homesick and like desperate for what it was, what life was before.
Yeah,
Well, you're like that
absolutely.
now.
You're nostalgic for the life that you
Nothing
had
happened.
before you were traumatized.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like now, sort of what is your work now? Like you have your podcast. What's like the main focus of that? Or like do you work on like prison reform, or I don't even know if that's the right term, but like what do you do now
Yeah, good
besides
question.
being a mom?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of mom stuff, but besides that, my husband and I have our podcast Labyrinths, which is a thing, and we interview lots of people. We also do all the production and scripting and all of that. But the main idea behind it is we like to talk to people about when they felt the most lost. And that can come in many different forms. I've talked to people about miscarriages. I've talked to people about medical issues that they've had. I've talked to people about wrongful convictions. And then on top of that, I try to support the Innocence Project and the various affiliated projects like that. I do a lot of journalism that has to do with criminal justice related issues. Especially issues that I feel like are these very, very easy fixes to like really, really big problems. An example is right now in Washington State, they're trying to change the law so that it makes it illegal for police to lie to juveniles when they're interrogating them. Because right now it's super, super legal for you to just lie, like you're interrogating people and police are allowed to lie to you. And this is particularly dangerous when it's juveniles because they're incredibly suggestible. And so you're getting juveniles to falsely confess to crimes that they didn't commit because they've been lied to by police officers. And they feel like, well, if the police say I did it, then I don't know, and I guess I must have done it, or I don't have, like, they're never going to believe me, so I might as well say I did it because they're the authority figures.
Yeah, they'll like give you a soda. There was like, hey, you want to?
Yeah, it's a whole like Brendan
Cactus
Dassey
cooler?
thing.
Brendan Dassey is a great example. So they're trying to change the law to at least make it so that juveniles are not getting lied to, even though they shouldn't be lying to anybody.
Brendan Dassey, he was told, well, if you just say this, you get to go home and watch WrestleMania.
You get to go
And the
home
kid
with
was
your
like,
mom.
I just want to go home and watch WrestleMania.
I'll tell you, like, at a certain point in interrogation, I'll tell you from experience, like, you are willing to believe and say anything as long as they stop yelling at you.
Shit.
So it's like, because they get you to the point of like, they isolate you, they gaslight you, they lie to you. I was hit, and like, they make you feel crazy. Yeah, they were hitting me in the back of the head, telling me to remember. They were hitting me and saying, remember, remember.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never eating pizza again.
That'll solve it.
Pizza's great. I never got to eat pizza as much, so like I eat all the pizza I can now.
Well, if we have a pizza party, I'll remember that.
I'll smack her in the back of the head. With pizza. Remember you said this?
Oh my gosh, Amanda, this has been like such an amazing chat. You are so open, and you also seem like so intelligent, and like I would guess that before all this happened, you must have already been like mature and like in touch. I don't know. I just feel like, you know, you come out of this situation, it like you might start doing porn, or like there's probably a lot.
Well, she went to Whitney's house. She could very easily start doing porn. You never know at that.
I was in that OnlyFans thong.
It was very
I
close.
was there to videotape it.
And I hope everyone watches you crush alongside Annie on the official Whitney Cummings
Annie
roast,
crushed
That was
it.
so fun.
That was so fun.
That
Yeah.
was fun.
which is free on OnlyFans TV. Yeah, and everyone should check out your podcast.
Labyrinth.
I'm excited. To
Is it
start
Labyrinths?
Labyrinths. yeah.
Labyrinths. Hell yeah.
listening. Yay!
Very
Thank you so much,
exciting, and
Amanda.
congratulations
This was so
on the
fun.
new baby.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very exciting to see you.
Yeah, I'm so excited I finally got to get on your guys' podcast.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It was a
Here,
quirky
how's it going?
time.
It was
We'll
a quirky
see you
time.
guys next
Thanks, guys.
That was
Thank you.
Yeah.